Let's talk about VIVO. I've gotten to know VIVO for the last couple of weeks, and it is definitely a different string from the rest of their lineup. Notably, it is a big accomplishment for ReString because their brand narrative is eco-conscious, and this is their first string made with recycled materials. And it's a highly playable string. I think ReString has a pretty high bar to meet, and we'll talk about how this string meets that bar. I'm gonna include some footage here of me playing like a 10-point ground game with a 4-5 player, but let me super quickly introduce you to this string. So as I said, it's made with recycled materials. It's the first string from ReString made with recycled materials, and the name VIVO means alive. And the name VIVO works because the materials used to make this string are being given a second life. And that eco-conscious narrative was always important to ReString, and you can see that they've also nailed that on their packaging, which they figured out a bit before releasing VIVO. This is the kind of packaging you'll see unless you order a reel. Their sets use a pretty minimalistic packaging, minimizing material. This string will be available for purchase on March 30th, and you can use my code ZeroLove, as it is everywhere pretty much, and you can also check my EU websites, also UK. I'll leave links for all of that down below, and discount options exist for all of those. All right, let's go over to the computer and watch a little bit of the playtest footage. I'll say more there.
All right, you can bet your bottom dollar I forgot my tripod in the car, so I just decided to put that thing on a chair. We're playing a ground game to 10 here, feed a ball, return it, and then the point starts, you know, basic ground game. I feel like I played pretty well. I mean, I'm still working on this lefty forehand, so that is still a handicap, but it's not as though my backhand wasn't also a handicap. But my lefty forehand, sure, it's probably more of a liability, but I am closing that gap. The forehand is becoming more and more of a weapon, more and more consistent. It's not quite as good as my righty forehand, but I feel like its potential is still better than a two-handed backhand for me. So either way, say what you want, I'm enjoying it. It's the way I'm going to play, and it's how I'm playing today, and I felt pretty good. So I was getting to know VIVO in the Axis 100 here. I strung it kind of low. I think I strung it at like 44 pounds with sink in the crosses. And as someone who is such a maniac about snapback, as most of you know me for being that way, I definitely cannot say that VIVO meets the same bar that Zero does or even Sink does. I would say that its snapback is actually pretty average as far as polyester strings go. I'd categorize it maybe to have the kind of snapback you might expect from strings like Hyper G or RPM Blast. I would still likely choose this string over those strings because it has playability characteristics that are favorable, but that's just a comparison to give you an idea of the type of snapback you can expect. So I'd categorize it as pretty average. But that's okay. For me, honestly, it's a little bit of a deal breaker, but that's just me keeping it real. And also me keeping it real is that not everybody is going to be so crazy about snapback. Some people might even prefer to have less of it than strings like Zero and Sink offer. And so for those people, or for those who care a little bit less about it, and like other things it might offer, ReString has a pretty different string to diversify its lineup. And it is made with 100% recycled material. Pretty cool. Quite an accomplishment, honestly. And characteristics like the tension maintenance and just general playability over time, this string meets the high bar that the other strings by ReString set. But if you're a really heavy topspin player and you want a string that maximizes spin and can stand the kind of abuse that heavy topspin puts on a string, I would have to say that this string probably isn't for you. If the thing you love about ReString is the insane snapback durability, so on, that you get from Zero, Zero is still probably going to be your main go-to string, potentially with Sink in the crosses, which I love hitting with. That's one of my main setups that I do most often and know the best is ReString Zero in the mains and Sink in the crosses. I often do 16 gauge of both. And when I say both, I do mean to imply that Sink at 17 gauge, for me, when I take my calipers out, it measures out to be 1.30, even though it's a 17 gauge string, whereas the 18 gauge string seems to actually measure out to be the 1.20 claimed. So I personally consider Sink 17 gauge to be more of a 16 gauge string. I'm not really sure what's going on at the factory there, but that is something to consider. Every single batch of mine that is 17 gauge from Sink has measured out to be more like 16. So if you have calipers or a micrometer or some way to measure that, I urge you to do the same and let me know what numbers you get. I'd like to say one more thing about the recycled material of this string. So I think that that's very cool as an eco-conscious accomplishment, but I do want to say that as somebody who generally will break strings like Hyper G or RPM Blast and probably VIVO within about 2 to 3 hitting sessions, in my case, and I know some people are in this boat, if you're a heavy topspin player and you're hitting with other heavy hitters, often. A string like ReString 0 very well may last you 2, 3, or 4 times as long as a lot of other strings. So if the goal is to be eco-conscious, I think you could also make an argument that 0 might be more eco-conscious if you're breaking strings so often, right? Like, is it more eco-conscious for me to use VIVO if I'm going through 3 or 4 times as many sets in a month? Potentially not. But it is cool that VIVO is giving recycled materials a second life, as opposed to using new materials and putting that back into the waste of the environment. So that is just some friendly food for thought. That is not supposed to be a hit piece or anything on VIVO. Again, I think it's a really good string, and the fact that it's so playable and has such good feel and a really predictable way of playing while also managing to be made of 100% recycled materials is genuinely impressive. But if I'm being honest, I am personally unlikely to use this string again. I get a lot more of the kind of playability that I want from strings like ReString Sync and ReString 0, especially. But there you have it. Those are my early impressions of the string. I hope it helps you make some decisions, and a commonly asked question for sure will be, how different is o-toro tour? And people are going to associate the two strings because they came out around the same time and they have almost the exact same color and they're both hexagonal strings. They're not really that alike. I think they're similar in stiffness and maybe feel, things like that. But o-toro tour has quite a bit more snapback. That's a string I'm still getting to know, so I can't speak on it super precisely, but they're pretty different strings. Be sure to check out my links. I have a few in the EU, so you can pick and choose. Maybe one will be better for you than another, so just be sure to check shipping rates and all that, but code ZeroLove should work on all of those websites, whether you're in the EU or the UK, and obviously if you're in the United States. If you've already tried this string, go ahead and let me know what you think in the comments, and for everybody else purchasing it from March 30th, let me know what you think. I'm sure some will feel me on what I said regarding the snapback, but I know there are a lot of people that are like, hey, snapback isn't the most important thing, and that's okay, baby. Different strokes for different folks, all good. ReString VIVO is going to be some people's favorite ReString string, for sure. So if and when you get your hands on a set of VIVO, let me know what you think in the comments. I look forward to hearing from you guys. And if you guys want to save 20% on a racket, go to directtennisshop.online and use my code. 20% off of literally any tennis racket. It's legit. They ship for free. They offer a stringing service as well, so your racket can come strong. If you have any questions about that, feel free to DM me, but I promise that is a legit website. 20% off of any racket easily saves like $50 on most rackets. All right, I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Happy hitting. I'll see you in the next one.